Hi, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Hope you had a great week. My life this spring has been very, very busy. So I have been really under the gun I'm actually traveling tomorrow to another state where I'll be giving some training to some people out there. So it's been busy. It's been good, but it's definitely been busy. And I trust for most of you in my audience, we're now hitting that spring season. The young are starting to become active, and your clients are probably ringing the phone off the wall for you. So take a deep breath. This is the money season. Power through. This will slow down. Although from what I hear, some people, it never slows down. It just goes from madness to urgent, right? So, but nevertheless, I hope your week has gone well. And because of my work schedule and the number of activities I've had, I thought I wanted to get a podcast out out here. Well, let me pause back. For those of you new to the show, what is Living the Wildlife all about? Well, we provide thoughtful training for those involved in the vertebrate pest field. So if you're a pest management professional, wildlife control operator, Living the Wildlife delves into the geeky details of different aspects of vertebrate pest control. So we're a little bit different than other podcasts out there. We often don't talk about, this is how you catch X and this is how you bend this metal. Those are all important skills. We delve into things that can't always be learned from experience. So we will dive into the peer-reviewed literature and the gray literature and recent research to try to give you some insights on biology that often can't be gleaned simply from years of work in the field. As valuable as that is, and there's a lot of important information out there that you're going to get from those other podcasts, but that's not going to be this podcast. We are delving into literature reviews, books, sometimes philosophy, sometimes politics, because we're taking a broader view of the industry, a longer term view. It's not just simply how to make money in the next 5 minutes. It's where are we going with this industry? How can you find that one piece of information that can give you a competitive edge over your competition and satisfy the needs of your clients in terms of their vertebrate pest control needs? So that is basically the focus of what the Living the Wildlife podcast is all about. So if you go back through the record, if you found me, you can find my other podcasts in this particular environment, whether it's YouTube or Rumble, and you'll see the topics can be sometimes arcane, and people can only see the value in those when they realize that they're looking for something beyond the ordinary. How do I set this trap? Where do I put this trap? We're going beyond that into some of that deeper, more precise, more arcane knowledge to give you that extra 2 or 3%. One of the things that I've talked to people when we talk about going to conferences and training events, they're like, I didn't learn anything there. It's just all the same thing. And if they say that may be true, and it could very well be true of those of you that have been in the business 10 or 15 years. It's really hard to find something new, right? But if you think carefully about some of these training events, what you learn is that it's reinforcing a lot of your fundamentals, and that's important. But if you also listen carefully, you may find 1 or 2 gems out of a 3-day conference, out of a 1-day conference. You may find one fact that was worth the entire visit. And that's what hard research is. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And so that's what I basically do here. All right, enough about that. Here's my website. For those of you who are interested in some of my publications, I have a store here. I don't hawk my material too much, but figured I'd want to make you aware of some publications. Of course, the Vertebrate Pest Handbook 3rd edition is now out. That focuses on commensal rodents, and it uses a question and answer format for those of you that want to use it as a training material either for yourself or for your employees or both. It provides you a series of questions on house mice, roof rats, brown rats, paramyscus, and this sort of thing, and even diseases and control methods. And in a question and answer format, you can create little quizzes and try to do some training on the road there. And also I have some equipment, some tools that you can be useful. And of course, we also provide consulting services that would cover things like maybe you want your photos organized, or you want them stamped with your company logo. Perhaps you want some PowerPoints kind of tidied up to make them look more professional. Those are things that I do with the Wildlife Control Consultant Store. And then, of course, I'm always looking to purchase the use rights of photos. I had a friend of mine, he's selling me the use rights. Not selling me the photos. He still owns them. I'm not owning his photos. I'm owning the right to use the photos. And those are all stamped, and so when I use them in various training events, his logo's right there on the photo. So it's not like I'm getting credit for it, but it helps illustrate a point that I want to make. Again, there are ways to make more money, especially for those of you that may be more part-time. You have maybe more time to make some really good photos, and so a way to make some extra money, definitely reach out to me. How do you reach out to me? Well, Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com, Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com. All right, so what do I want to talk about this week? Well, I wanted to give you 5 tips to think about as you are working through your busy season. Just 5 things that I want you to think about, sort of actionable items for you to consider as you're in the midst of probably some of the busiest time of your business during the year. So tip number one is take photos before, during, and after you're doing a big job. And what do I mean by a big job? Well, that kind of depends on you and your company, right? What's a big job for you, right? So I'm not sure you have to take a lot of photos if you're doing a chipmunk job in someone's yard. But excuse me, but if you're working on a roof and if you're working on a roof and you're making some major repairs, perhaps you're walking on the roof, putting on a new chimney cap, perhaps you're crowning it, making repairs to attic vents, it's probably a good idea for you to take photos of the roof, because what happens if there's a leak in 3 weeks? Who are they going to blame? They're going to blame you, saying you're walking across that roof caused that roof to leak. Right? So take photos before, during, and after, and then make sure you have a filing system for that. So that's a good idea, and your insurance company will certainly appreciate it. Taking photos has saved some wildlife control operators from lawsuits where they were blamed for things that weren't their fault. Okay, and I do hope if things are your fault that you make the repairs necessary to fix it up. Accidents happen, but you don't want to be blamed for something that you didn't do and you weren't responsible for. Tip number 2, on major jobs, get the client to pay for the materials before you begin the job. Well, this was a tip I learned from someone, and I thought, why didn't I think of that? Well, this is an important tip. For example, let's say you have a big bird job, and there may be a couple $1,000s in netting, screws, maybe you have to do some rental equipment. You don't want to be fronting all that money, and then all of a sudden you have to chase the client around trying to get paid for it. It's one thing to lose money for your time. It's another thing to lose money and you have all this stuff around, or you've installed it on the building, and now you have it on the building and you can't get paid for that, or maybe you had to carry a loan or put it on a credit card because you thought you'd get covered by the client within 30 days. Yeah, right. So the reality is make sure, and we have these big jobs. I'm not talking about just a little sheet of aluminum flashing that you're putting over a squirrel hole or something, or using some hardware cloth. I'm talking about some of these big jobs where you're putting out some dough to get the materials needed to do that job and maybe do that exclusion work. You make sure that client pays for that up front. And you don't do a thing until you get that money. You say, well, the client says you'll go with someone else. You know what? Maybe sometimes that's a clue. Someone tries to strong arm you. That's a clue that maybe they're not going to be legit. Some people, unfortunately, know how to rip off contractors, right? So contractors sometimes abuse clients. That certainly can happen, but it cuts the other way too, and you want to make sure you protect yourself in that regard. Number 3, if you are running like crazy, if your phone is ringing off the wall and you are busy and you're trying to even figure out when you're going to sleep or when you're going to eat or kiss your spouse, pause for a moment and ask yourself this question: are you charging enough? I just had to talk to a person the other day, and they are so busy, and I said right to him, I said, you are not charging enough. And she didn't argue with me, okay? She tries to help people, and that's all well and good. That's fine, if as long as you know you're doing that. It's not about gouging people. It's about using money as a way to slow down the number of calls, and so that you have to be sure you have a life. Remember, the purpose of running your business is you want to help clients, but you're also trying to improve your life. Not necessarily take care of everyone else's life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's a balance here. And so money is the way to saying, okay, if you need this done, I need to get this level of money because of the amount of work that you have. And so it's a way for you to oscillate and control some of your income, because sometimes if you get more money, you may be able to hire an employee because, I can't find anyone willing to work. Yeah, I understand finding people that are willing to work can be extraordinarily difficult. I get that. But part of the reason why you're having trouble finding good workers is that, are you really paying well, right? This is fairly sacrilegious, and I don't want to offend people. Those who know me know that I'm I'm a Christian. But I sometimes phrase it this way, and I use it as shock value to try to get the point across to people. And that is, yeah, I wanted to hire Jesus too, but I couldn't find him at minimum wage. He's just not available right now. And sometimes when I listened to business owners whine about how they can't find good workers, I have to ask myself the question saying, what are you offering the worker? What kind of long-term future are you giving them? And I'm not saying it's easy. I think there has been a cultural shift. A lot of people today, unfortunately, think everything needs to be handed to them. But by the same token, of people that have worked for companies for years, and the company has never turned to them and said, you know what, you've been really loyal to us. We're going to give you a raise. We're going to give you a promotion. We're going to give you maybe more time off. No, that doesn't happen. They just want to say, oh, we're making a boatload of money off this guy. We're just going to try to make more. If you want to create a company like a family, then it needs to act like a family and not a dysfunctional one, right? So very important to think about, but that's just sort of a sideline. The bottom line here is if you are just balls to the walls with work, you need to be thinking about oscillating some of your prices and saying, I need to charge this much to do that kind of work. Now, there's another way to do that. If, let's say, you don't want to raise money, well, you can also shrink the size of your service area. Another option is to shrink the number and type of services that you provide. It could be that things are so crazy, I'm not doing any more bat jobs until blah, 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 or I'm not doing any this type of job. till which kind, whatever jobs are like huge time sucks and they're just not that profitable. I know a lot of people make pretty good money on bat work, so that may be a bad example. But nevertheless, there's, part of the reason why people make good money on bat work is that it's time consuming, right? You are locked into that particular location. But maybe there's some other jobs that just aren't making a whole lot of money for you, and that maybe you need to table those so you can put your time into the higher revenue producing type jobs. So those are 3 strategies on how to reduce the workload, because you don't want to drop your quality and your safety, right? That's going to be something very important. So number 4, be careful when you find yourself cutting corners. Now that is hard to do when you're in the midst of being rushed, but it can be very subtle. One of the most dangerous things we can say in the wildlife control field is, I'm just going to, and it's a way that sort of we're going to cut a corner here. Well, I'm just going to lean over on my ladder a little bit just to do this last hole. I don't want to move the ladder. I'm just going to climb the roof without the rope. I'm just going to stick my head up into the attic without my respirator. When you find yourself under such pressure where you can't follow proper safety procedures, that's a danger sign. And you also need to have someone in your company. I know a lot of you guys work alone, but you need to have someone who can check in with you from time to time, where you will actually listen to them, where they're saying, you know what, you need to kind of dial this back. You're running a little ragged here. And that's hard to do. A lot of you guys are in this business. You're type A personalities. You hate people telling you what to do. You're probably hating me right now for telling you what to do. But whether you do it or not is completely up to you. It's your business. My point is, though, is that you know what I'm saying is true. You know what I'm saying is right. It's just painful, right? And so, because we don't want to do it, and you know that you're going to say to yourself, I'm different. My situation's different. Yeah, a lot of times we cut corners and we get away with it, right? How many times do we speed or we run a yellow light or whatever the case may be? We hit some black ice and we're able to get out of it one way or the other and everything's fine. All it takes is one mistake. And then some of the heights you guys are working in, that mistake's enough to kill you or to cause you significant bodily injury. Make sure you have a way to periodically step back and say, am I cutting corners here? That's endangering my safety, the safety of my client, the safety of my coworkers, and the future of my business. All right, I'll just leave it at that. That's number 4. Tip number 5, prepare for downtime. You're like, downtime? I'm busy all the time here. I can't even think straight. This is spring, we're going crazy. Yeah, I understand that. But thunderstorms happen, tornadoes occur, vehicles break down, you get sick, you get injured. Prepare for downtime. Either for something you can control or something you can't control. Sooner or later, you're going to encounter something, whether it's busy or not, and you're going to have some downtime. You need to plan for how you're going to utilize that downtime effectively. Whether are you going to be reading a book? Are you going to be cleaning the truck? Could you be getting the truck repaired? Could you be getting the truck, maybe the oil change done, getting your hair cut, taking care of paperwork, purchasing new supplies, working on marketing, updating your website, calling older clients, doing some training, going online, doing some training, listening to my podcast if you're not doing it in your vehicle. Again, don't watch it while you're driving, okay? The point is you need to have a plan so that when you have downtime, you have things that can be done that need to be done. I'm not talking about just make work. I'm talking about things that can be done that are going to improve the efficiency and the quality of your services for when you no longer have that downtime. One of the things I recommend to wildlife control operators is you're going to be getting your oil changed. The vehicle's going to have its oil changed. Someone's going to be probably staying with the vehicle, unless you're in a situation where you can leave it overnight and it's going to be done during your closed hours. That would be awesome. But while you're sitting in the waiting room, don't just be looking at your phone playing a video game. Are you marketing? Are you reading a book? Are you looking up something? Are you ordering supplies? Did you have a way to have sort of a mobile office so that you could continue operating your business during your downtime, taking care of some of the things that you wouldn't want to be doing if you had good weather or the vehicle was on the road? Even situations such as checking in with, doing follow-up on bills that haven't been paid. Okay. Find things, and you should have a little list in your planner of things that you want to do, projects that you can be doing during your downtime periods, and prioritize them. Again, that now you're working on your business as opposed to working for your business. Very, very important for you to think about. So let's recap those 5 tips that I'm giving you to think about. Number 1, take photos before, during, and after your big jobs. Right? This is something to protect you from lawsuits and liability. Number 2, on major jobs, the client must be paying for your materials before you begin work. In other words, you shouldn't have any money out of your pocket ordering supplies, nets, spikes, renting your lifts, perhaps, things that are going to be, the client needs to have skin in the game on this. You can haggle with them about getting paid for your hours, but you should not be floating them the loan on the equipment and materials. Number 3, if you're running like crazy and you're just can't seem to have time to satisfy all the needs of your clients, and think about raising your prices. That's one option. You can narrow your service area so you're not driving as much. That's a second option. Or you can reduce the number of services that you provide to the ones that are time drains, right? Focus your attention only on providing those services that have the highest profit margin, or any combination of the above. Okay? Those are ways for you to handle that. You don't have to go crazy with raising prices. Sometimes 5% can make a huge difference, right? Of course, with gasoline prices going up, you may need to be doing that regardless. Okay? Number 4, be careful when you find yourself cutting corners, whether with the quality of your service or with your safety practices. And I gave some illustrations. Oh, I'm just going to stick my head up into the attic without a respirator. Oh, I'm going to just grab this animal without gloves. Or I'm just going to run this yellow light. When you find yourself doing that, you need to have a way to check yourself and saying, hey, I need to take a breather here. I'm under too much stress. I need to kind of slow down. You also need to have someone in your life who can hold you accountable and that you will actually listen to them. It's very hard to find that person because a lot of times our friends just want to reaffirm what we want them to affirm about us. Like, enough about me, what do you think about me? That's what kind of the friends we often like to have around. But a true friend is someone who will say, hey, you're getting a little out of land. You need to kind of dial it back. You're taking some unnecessary risks here, and it's going to threaten. And I'm telling you this because I love you. But you need to be in an emotional state to accept that and not just blow it off because, he's a jerk, he's jealous, whatever the case may be. You need to be in a position to take that. Someone needs to be able to dial you back. Number 5, last one, prepare for downtime. You are going to have downtime, yes. Even during the busiest times of your season, there's going to be downtime. Make sure you have a plan for how to make the most of that downtime, whether it's cleaning vehicles, organizing paperwork, ordering new supplies, repairing equipment, organizing your trucks, any of those types of things. Those can be very valuable tools to sort of leverage you when the weather turns good or when your obstructions to your business operation have been removed, that you have a plan to move forward, and now you're going to be launching even farther and you're going to become more efficient. There needs to take the time, as they say, to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy, I got to keep cutting. Sometimes you can use these downtimes to sharpen that saw, so when the downtime is over, you're cutting faster than before, to use the saw analogy. Well, I hope you found these 5 points valuable for you. Just some quick tips. And I've been quite busy. I hope you're making money out there. And again, if you're thinking about that you have to do a PowerPoint, or perhaps you have some images that you want to have organized and stamped with your logos, definitely reach out to me. How do you reach me? wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you and talk about how we could provide some services for you. And if you're looking for some training materials, of course, you can get that from my store, and also some wildlife control supplies. And if you would, do us a big favor, if you like the podcast, give us a 5-star review and ring the bell and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you along. And then until next time, we'll talk to you then. So this is Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Well, we call it Living the Wildlife because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.